Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for joining our Stamina weekly bi-weekly meeting. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're calling it Stamina Matters, and it's kind of a recap. So we've been doing this for about half a year now. This has been mostly a seminar series where we've had talks on our three key topics. One being social tech and ways that new technologies are being used to help us coordinate online. That's one of the spheres. The second sphere is more of a science, sort of social science modeling sphere. And then the third sphere is sort of maybe more of an engineering field of agent capabilities and the risks and safety research that goes on. And we identified these three as being sort of mutually synergistic and interesting and sort of being together some kind of forefront for what new technologies are going to be. And we didn't feel like they were really talking so much to each other. And so we formed Stamina as sort of a forum for like a fast response research channel to have people be able to present work and talk about what they think are the most interesting questions at this intersection. Um, so we've been running these bi-weekly meetings. It's like an academic talk, like an hour, 45 minutes plus questions. We have a website. But maybe just to sort of outline what I'd like to cover today is sort of I'll start with a recap of the kinds of talks that we've had and the sort of knowledge base construction that we're trying to do here and some agenda setting work that we've done in the form of research papers and some proposals. And then I want to talk about our next big community event, which is going to be our second edition of a workshop at the Conference on Language Modeling, Colm conference, which will be in October. This year, it'll be in San Francisco. And then I also want to talk a bit about a shared task that we've appended to this workshop, which we're excited about and that we're hoping will sort of help focus the research community's attention onto some of the key problems. And then I thought we could end today with just some open discussion about what it is people are sort of most interested in at this intersection. Okay, so Stamina actually came about in the embers of the first workshop that we put on for social simulations with LLMs. This was at Colm last year. We had lots of cool submissions here and a legible list, but there were many. There was really lively. People were really engaged. It felt like we were sort of pulling people out of the woodwork that had been um, researching the topic somewhat disjointed, and it seemed like it was like a moment and people were asking, what's the next event, what are we doing? And at that point we hadn't really thought that far, because we had just sort of put it together as a research topic that we were interested in. But as a result of having put it together and the feedback that we got, we realized that there felt like there really was some kind of um, interest in having something come out of that. And so Stamina was sort of our response. It took us 3 months to sort of get our act together and put things together. But in the end, at the beginning of this year, we started it. So we have this landing page based out of the Complex Data Lab, which is a academic research lab here in Montreal at McGill. So you can access the webpage at complexdatalab.com/stamina. Um, and yeah, we've been having we're trying to sort of get the word out, although so please, forward and share as much as you can. We're on Blue Sky and on the Complex Data Lab LinkedIn account that has a modest 300 followers, but at least we're getting some kind of reach. Maybe we can talk about this in the later part, about how to improve that reach. But this is where you can find us. And these are the talks that we've had so far. So we've had 9 talks. going in chronological order. So we started with a nice sort of social sciencey paper about emergent coordination in networks of LLM agents. Then we had a talk by Martin Weiss about the AI and the future of science, and this issue with the this sort of verification generation gap that seems to be vanishing now, that it's just easy to generate all kinds of stuff, but how do we verify um, the quality of the content, and the sort of stresses that that puts on a lot of existing mechanisms that society and science has used to sort of um, gate quality. And then we had some talks on social science stuff. So Ryan Faulkner, who's in Zijin's lab in Toronto now. He comes from the Joel Leibel group at DeepMind, the Concordia group. Then we had another sort of social tech talk by Marc Antoine that was about AI and the knowledge commons, and how AI might actually, so typically we have this sort of dual use view, and people talk a lot about the negative potential, but there's lots of positive potential. And so Marc Antoine was saying how we can use LLMs to scaffold um, democratic consensus making mechanisms that previously seemed sort of not possible just because of all the logistical work. And then we had a talk by Jen herself, and then another social tech talk by Roman Tamari, who's behind Semble, which is a social network on Blue Sky that's sort of set up for research and knowledge sharing, on which we actually have built our own knowledge base, which I'll get to on another slide. And then we had a set of talks on in May on persona research. We had a talk from Marwa and Lorenzo on persona collapse, which is this issue phenomena of diversity and expression of LLM agents. And then finally, we had a talk by Elias that was wide ranging on sort of safety issues with regards to communication and multi-agent training. And so we're starting to sort of cover these three topics, and we hope to continue to do this in future talks. We will likely have a couple more talks before August, and then I think we'll take a break in August and start up again in September. So stay tuned for that. We have a knowledge base that we're starting to build on Semble. So Semble is on the @ protocol. So we use our Blue Sky handle, Stamina Work Group. And we've added all the talks as cards, and we've added the talks from last year's workshop. And I think we're going to think more about how we could sort of leverage this potentially as a place where we build a literature reference library for these topics. I'm talking with Ronan about the development work that they're doing on Semble that could support that. So that's another direction. Another big thing that we did recently was set up our own Slack. So this is Stamina, and it's we're hoping that it's going to be sort of the central hub for this. I think because it allows for more discussion and communication. Currently, we have an intros channel where we would ask you to drop in a little blurb on who you are and where you're coming from. So Gian Marco, who gave our first talk here, is given his blurb here. And then we have some dedicated channels for the workshop that I'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, if you guys have ideas for other channels to add, that would be something that we would be happy to do and ask questions. This would be the place to do it. Okay, so now I'm going to shift a bit to sort of agenda setting. So we put out a ICML position paper um, trying to focus the field's attention on validation, which we feel is what sort of came out of the first workshop, that people were trying lots of stuff, but it was sort of hard to compare results and dig down to what made them work the way that they did. And so in this position paper, we proposed that, we can semi-use the kind of mathematical formalism that's used in machine learning that helps provide a common language where we can now point to specific aspects of a simulation when we want to um, communicate or highlight specific aspects, and we'll talk about what that is in a minute. This also allows us to frame common pitfalls so that we can start to build a sort of shared methodology and sense of sort of what works and what doesn't and what to avoid. And maybe even at a higher level of the whole research community, we can start to be working towards frictionless reproducibility, which is this concept first put forth by Donoho in a paper some years ago now, and people like Ben Recht have been highlighting it, and it's just this thing that seems to work in machine learning, where if you make it really easy to iterate and make everything sort of explicit, and you have a community of people that have adopted these practices of shared benchmarks, open data, and reproducible evaluation protocols, you can really move progress in a field quite quickly and clearly, because it's sort of built into the research methodology structure. And so that was our call. And since then, we've made one proposal in that direction, and we hope that others in the community make similar proposals, which we are, I think, seeing now. So this is a submission that's on the archive now that you can look at. It's called EASE, so Environment, Agents, Simulation Engine, and Evaluation Metrics. So the idea here was that we want a simulator to be configured explicitly at the level of detail that really captures everything that you want to do. So things are not hard-coded deep in the code, and you have to sort of dig in to sort of figure out what the simulation does. We want the configuration to be verbose enough that it really contains everything that we would want to know. And where we've included evaluation metrics with the idea that we're hoping that any simulation that's run is run for a purpose, in that there's something that you want to measure from it. And so that becomes an intrinsic part of the configuration of a simulation. And so to run this, so you have a configuration that you then provide to some engine. We implemented an engine that's an iteration on something that the Concordia group at DeepMind had worked on, where there's an environment object and that provides observations to an agent that acts, and the environment has a resolve function that enacts the effects of that action. And then this operates in some kind of loop. There are many potential implementations of the engine. We provided one of them, but the idea is that all the essential configurations of that engine are in the config itself. And then as a final step, we thought it made sense to wrap the entire thing in a study structure. So the idea is that you're running simulations because you're interested in some kind of question. And so that's number one here, is that you start by asking a question. Then you think, okay, well, maybe, maybe the simulation works a certain way. So let's come up with a hypothesis. What's a prediction that we could make based on that hypothesis? That then determines the specifics of the configuration that we run. We run it, we get the logs of the output, we evaluate that output, and that leads to some kind of maybe refinement of our hypothesis. And this has this like experimentation loop where we're cycling through a sequence of hypotheses that potentially hopefully will get better refined with each iteration, and providing some knowledge along the way about how the system works. So this is a complicated graphic, but this was all in this proposal that you can read more of if you take a look at the archive submission. So that was part of our pitch, and we've implemented a sort of ease compliant simulator in a framework or a simulation suite called Silicon Society Sandbox, or Silly Socks for short. I didn't come up with that, but that was the democratically selected word, and
That
it's starting to grow on me now.
that was me. I'm very proud of it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yes, you're right. Great job. It's very catchy. I agree. Um, and so this is a GitHub repo that you can access. There's a fair bit of, docs to sort of walk you through how to set things up. Um, so take a look there. Right. So just as a summary, so everything starts with text-based YAML configurations that operate through this library called Hydra that helps with experimentation. There's a simulation runner, builds the agents, what their memories are, sets up the environment backend. Then there's a game master that orchestrates the simulation, the interaction between agents and the environment within a simulation loop. And we've added some sort of evaluation probe objects that you can do to interrogate the simulation while it's running, and then you get a bunch of output at the end. So so that was the sort of agenda setting part where we tried to sort of, flag post a bit where we think the field should go in terms of research, but we want to try and bring people together. And so we put in an application for another Colm workshop, our second edition, which was accepted, one of 18 of 90 applications. So we were happy that we were selected there. The focus of this workshop is a little bit more scoped onto fidelity in applications. So we have a set of 5 speakers here, all of whom have sort of done work in this field. Noah Goodman is more on the cog-sci side and has interesting work on simulating human dialogue. Logan Cross has been working with the Concordia group. Marwa has been doing persona work. Zong Yu has done a whole breadth of stuff on LLM sims. And Slava is actually coming more from a policy area, which we thought was important to bring in, since simulations now are being touted as potential tools and instruments for policy making. Part of our motivation for doing all this community building work is that we want to make sure that these things aren't going to be deployed in high risk settings and used irresponsibly. So we're trying to build in good research practices at the start instead of as a response after something goes wrong. But in any case, so we're excited about this workshop. It's going to be in October. The submission deadline for papers is actually this Friday. So please spread the word far and wide to anyone you know who might be interested in the topic. They can check out the website, which I realize is not on the slide here, but we will make it accessible on the Slack, which I guess is the best place for live up-to-date news. Okay, so we have the regular submissions for the workshop. And we thought that maybe it would be even more constructive to have some kind of shared task where in addition to just getting all the interesting stuff that people are doing on their own, but bring people together to work on the same thing. Because there's lots of interesting proposals for how to ground and validate LLM social sims. These are just some frameworks that have been introduced, and I'll be sure to share the slides if you want to follow these up. And a lot of these works point out brittleness in certain aspects of these simulations. But I think what we want to try to do is find out like what is useful about them. Where can we find robust results? And so we thought we would build this shared task as a kind of research target for people to focus on teasing robustness out of these simulations. The only problem is that if we just left it open, it would be sort of hard to compare results across submissions. And our solution to that was to provide a set of studies all implemented within this one single framework, which we took to as the Silly Socks one. And that way we can have a shared set of configurations. We can even provide runs that people can develop evaluations on. And so that's what we did. So we built these 5 scenarios within the context of a study. So these were pulled by sort of looking across the range of phenomena that people tend to study using LLM social simulations, taking some existing work in the literature. So the first one is a sort of strategic reasoning game theory context. The next one is a similar-ish context, but where the focus is really about reasoning about what other agents are doing. The third one is about social structure. In particular, we chose the formation of echo chambers in a social media setting. The fourth one is persona expression. So persona elicitation is a sort of central topic in LLM social simulation, and what kind of properties of the simulation allow semantic expression of persona, how LLMs are grounded in personas, and all the issues that come up with doing that. And then finally, a study on opinions and beliefs, which is tied to some survey results. So these were the 5 topics, and each what we're calling a scenario ships with a design file in which we have specified a set of anchors, which are published works that have presented the problem or analyzed the problem in some way, and that we think have provided some interesting hypotheses. Was there a question?
Yeah, you have a question in chat.
I was just wondering, in terms of the social structure, it's such a broad topic of, relationship and power and influence. Why focus specifically on polarization? I mean, it's an important topic, but I'm trying to figure out how does that.
Just because it seemed like it was something. So it was something that comes out of a lot of social science research and social media in particular. There's various other types of structure that you could do. I think we had a particular paper that we were pulling from for that.
I think polarization is interesting because it's supposed to be reasonably simple to have as an emergent property of a network. So it's a reasonably achievable target. And also it's interesting in that it's at the source of a lot of social media problems that maybe we're interested in addressing. And so since it's both simple and also relevant in like a real world sense, it ends up being an interesting topic.
Got it. Thank you. To some extent, polarization is also, bias. It's also influence, and it has a pejorative connotation, but it could also be, polarization and everybody doing the right thing. I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah. The emergence of social structure is not bad. I mean, social structure is essential, and I guess it's just, in this case, uh, it has a negative connotation. But you can imagine clustering based on like interests that help people focus their attention into
Elaborate.
tasks that are efficient or something, which is another maybe more positive connotation of clustering. So I should say that these five were this is our first sort of attempt to put something like this together, and we are hoping that it goes through many rounds of iterations as people try it and explore different ways of evaluating um, them. So maybe I can get to just explaining what we're hoping people do here. So just to finish with what we provide. So in this design, we have these anchors. We explicitly state different hypotheses that papers have made, and then we've identified a set of configuration variables within the sim that seem related to, or that seem to underlie these various hypotheses. And then we provide a set of runs that sweep over um, these values with the idea that we can provide a set of simulation runs that in principle could be used to assess some of these hypotheses. What's needed is just how to evaluate them. So what sort of post-processing on the sims. And so that's what the shared task is about. Your job is to propose an evaluation for one or more of the five provided studies. And write the code, and we've provided some helper functions here to implement your metric on the simulation runs that we've provided, and store the results. And then you submit like a 2-page paper. You can put all the details that you want in an appendix, but we want you to present the evaluation metric that you think makes sense, why you chose it, and how to implement it, and include some of the results of what you got once you applied it. And to link to some open code repository on GitHub that holds the application of the code that you had and the results that you got. So this is going to be due in just over a month. It's separate from the main workshop track, in the sense that it's a bit delayed, and we will have like a special session for it at the workshop. But we hope to have submissions and deal with it in many of the same ways. So there will be like a review period afterwards, and you'll get feedback, etc. And so that closes the workshop activities. So for this shared task, you can go to the workshop website, which we've posted on the Slack, to get more details. And you can also ask any further questions on the Slack as well. There are dedicated channels. Let's see if I can. Right, so we have a social sim 26, which is just a generic. We should probably put workshop there for the workshop, and then for the shared task specifically. And now finally that I've talked probably too much, but I thought we could sort of open up discussion about what we want to see in the future of Stamina. This could include, more talks, more sort of reference library work, or other ideas. So that's all I have. So I want to thank you for listening. And yeah, maybe we could just have an open discussion now. Maybe Zachary, you could stop the recording. and we can